Hey everybody out there, this is Terry Yuede with the Yuede team, and welcome to our webinar. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at some forecasting. We're going to go through some data that was provided to us by the National Associations of Realtors, Real Estate and Economic Outlook. Mostly information about real estate, but not 100%. So here at the Yuede team, we really look at real estate. We think everybody should look at real estate as an investment. I mean, whether you're buying investment property, you want to be a landlord, or even if you're wanting to buy a home for yourself, you know, if you look at real estate like an investment, like you should, it's very important to be a savvy investor to know what's going on with the market, which is really why we like doing these webinars in an attempt to keep people out there, whether our clients or the general public, to keep people informed.
Absolutely. For most people, buying a home is typically going to be the largest investment that they're ever going to make in their lives. So looking at this data, making sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, making good, solid decisions on the purchase of a home or even selling a home is something that's very important.
Real quick before we get started, we just want to invite people to go onto YouTube. You can search Yuede Team on YouTube and take a look at our catalog of all the webinars that we've made through the years. We've been doing these webinars for, what, 4 or 5 years now?
We have some videos on there as well.
We do. We have some videos. You can also download our webinars and podcasts on iTunes, and also wanted to invite everybody to like us on Facebook, so you can receive informational blogs about upcoming events that we're doing here on the Yuede team. So let's get right into this information. We really have a lot of information to cover tonight. We're going to certainly attempt to keep this quite a bit shorter than an hour, but we're going to get into it so we can get through some of this information. Okay, so this first slide is existing home sales, and you can see, you know, right here the red arrows. You see the dip right there. Obviously, that's when the real estate downturn started. Was right around 2006.
And this is national data.
This is national, and this is, you know, this is actually number of units being sold, and we're starting to see an increase. I mean, the real estate market's looking really good right now. You know, a lot of the information that you hear in the media is positive about the real estate market, and we're seeing that definitely here in our local markets. St. Charles has been a fantastic market. That's where our office is, and we live. St. Louis, a lot of areas in St. Louis are fantastic too. But there's definitely some areas that are lagging behind quite a little bit.
We've been talking about this ever since the crash, and then whenever the recovery started, that some of the areas started recovering faster right away, some of the areas slower, some of the areas really not at all.
Right.
And it's really interesting here to look at St. Louis and St. Charles, our markets, to really look at some of those areas that have gone up, you know, versus some of the areas that really haven't at all, and then trying to figure out why.
So moving right along, we see here the median home price, near 20% gain in the last 2 years. So that's really good. And again, this is a national statistic. But you know, you see again the dip. It goes, you know, right along with what we saw from the existing home sales. That same type of curve there, where we're starting to see a good gain. So good news is, if you're an owner out there, your real estate is worth more than it was in 2011.
No doubt. Even if you owned before the market crashed, you know, and if you were able to keep your hands on the property, a lot of people didn't, but a lot of people did. And those people that didn't, like us, we kept our investment properties. Now at this point, we're finally starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and we're patting ourselves on the back, you know, saying, thank God we hung on to our assets and we weathered the storm.
Absolutely.
St. Louis housing statistics, and obviously, you know, St. Louis is our major market. St. Charles is our major market too. But looking at this slide, we see that it's up. Closed sales up, average price up, dollar volume up. Dollar volume is the amount of dollars that are going into real estate. Except for the active listings, and they're shrinking, and this is really crazy for the 4th straight year.
That's something else.
So inventory has continued to shrink, even though the housing market has recovered.
And this is something that we have continued to tell sellers. Right now, really a good time to get your house on the market.
Yeah, if you're thinking about selling now, you know, and you can sell and you can go ahead and list the property, really take a close look at getting the property on the market this spring, hopefully, if at all possible.
Absolutely.
Very important not to miss this window. St. Charles, again, we have closed sales up, median prices up, dollar volume up, and then days on market is shrinking for the second straight year, down in 53 days. So we've continued to see a hot real estate market, particularly in St. Charles County, over the last couple of years. What's really driving it? Obviously affordability, low interest rates, lack of inventory too. To where there's buyers out there that might not be able to buy the house that they want, or we're back in some cases we're seeing more than one contract on the same listing. All that type of stuff is becoming common again in our real estate market. So if you're looking to buy, be aggressive. Make sure that you're making lots of offers. Make sure that you're looking at lots of properties. And again, if right now you're thinking about selling it, the timing really could be good.
If you look at that dollar volume up 54% from 2 years ago. Wow, that's really something.
A lot more money putting into real estate right now, especially in St. Charles.
This is a monthly pending sales index, 2011 through 2013. And one thing that we noticed, and this is kind of interesting, is we were up for like 18 months in a row. More sales. The real estate value was going up, and the real estate value really hasn't slipped at all. But as far as the number of pending sales, we did see a little bit of a dip in the end of 2013.
Pretty sharp dip.
Yeah, you can see it right here, and that's interesting. And this really started. People say, oh, it's because of the nasty winter, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. But this dip really started prior to going into the winter time in the fall.
Before the weather got real bad. So you think about maybe the government shutdown.
Yes.
Being one of the factors. How many people wanted to sell in November and December of 2013, and they're thinking, well, what the heck? We got to wait and see what happens with this government shutdown first.
Right.
So to me, that was probably the biggest reason, why we saw this downturn, which is unfortunate to blame our own government for this type of thing, but it is what it is.
Well, you have to. The people in Washington aren't doing us any favors. There's no doubt about that.
Agreed.
Buyer and seller traffic, and again, this goes into the government shutdown. We're seeing some dysfunction with the economy, and you see, as far as the buyer traffic, again, it is highlighted there with the red circle. You see a sharp decrease. Beginning, looks like probably around summertime into spring in 2013. Mismatched growth. This is really a staggering statistic whenever you look at it. When you look at the home prices going up 19%, and this is in the last 2 years, household income up 4%.
And as we look at the real estate market and some of the forecasting that some of the data that we're going to be talking about tonight, one thing that stands out as far as trying to predict or trying to get our arms around what's going to happen in the future is affordability. It does look like that the affordability is not going to be what it was over the last couple years. That it's going to be more expensive for people to buy homes. And then obviously we see, looking at this graph, that the home prices have continued to rise, where the amount of money that people making are not rising as fast. So that is certainly going to affect affordability, not on the right side.
Correct.
And then also more about on that affordability is the inevitable rise of the mortgage rates. They've been low for several years, kind of ever since the crash, and they've kind of continued to drop. And I don't think that they're going to shoot up. They're not going to skyrocket anytime soon. Maybe
that's
never.
What we're hearing.
But they're probably going to start slowly creeping up a little bit, and they already have. As you can kind of see the end of this graph, where the mortgage rates are starting to rise again.
So this is something very important to think about, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, is that affordability has been, in the last several years, has been really at an all-time low. I mean, they were saying that affordability was better over the last couple of years than even like in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm. I heard that.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to think about that as far as timing when you're thinking about what your plan is, if you're going to make a move or buy a house or sell a house.
And if the affordability is going to be affected, negatively, then is it going to become a little bit tougher for sellers to sell over the next 5 years?
It very well could.
Very well could. Falling affordability to 5-year low, but interesting, still fifth best in 40 years. So historically, we're still in a good spot. People that can afford a house, people that have the financial means to buy, and they haven't, they should really, really remain motivated to do so, because we still feel that any investment that you can make, whether it's gold, stocks, bonds, whatever you're talking about, we feel that real estate over the long haul is really the best way to increase your wealth down the road. Number one, you got to have a roof over your head. If it's an investment property, you can rent it out, you can make money on it every month. But if you can put a mortgage on it and you can hang on to your real estate for 20 or 30 years and you can pay it off, what better way is there to build your wealth? And what better way is there to expect a return out of your money? Plus you have an asset, plus you have a chance for income, plus you have tax advantages now for having real estate. So, I can't preach enough. Anybody that is interested and can buy a house, you really should.
And so another point, just to add on to that, Keith, is, we feel that owning real estate really protects you from inflation. And inflation is, I'm not positive we have a graphic here on inflation, but we're going to see inflation over the next couple of years. I mean, there's no doubt about it. As soon as the economy corrects, it's correcting already, but,
I think we've already seen it in certain markets.
We have.
Fuel. How expensive are groceries now?
Right. Right. So owning real estate, it's a good way, like you said, to protect your wealth, protect your assets, and then also protect your assets from inflation.
Well, and the idea is that, and even this is, talking more about investment property, but, if the dollar gets shredded, and, 10 years down the road, if you have a property now that you're renting out for $1,000 a month and inflation is crazy, you're going to be able to take that same property if you still own it, and instead of renting it out for $1,000 a month, you're renting it out for $5,000 a month. So it's certainly a great way to protect yourself from the value of the shrinking dollar.
Refinances will collapse in 2014 to a 15-year low. So everybody that's in the mortgage business, get ready to start doing some purchases, right? Because they've been doing refi after refi, and rates continue to go. I mean, I would venture to say that there's not very many homeowners that haven't done a refinance, if they're able to, over the past 4 or 5 years.
Those people that are able to refi have already done it.
Correct.
So from all circles, we're hearing that the refis are going to slow. We've been hearing that's nothing new, and we've been hearing that for months now. But it's going to affect the market, especially banking.
So what will this mean for the financial industry? Profits from low rates and refis. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, are they is this going to boost purchase apps? You would think so. And this is an important point to think about for sure. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. But basically, if the refi boom is gone, then the banks are going to have a large portion of how they make money. I mean, when you go to do a refi, the banks charge you fees. Okay, so they make money no matter what. And what you have to do if you're going to do a refinance is you really need to put a pencil to paper, and you have to figure out how long am I going to be in this house, because there is cost involved with going through a refinance. You have to pay a lender. You have to pay for an appraisal. You have to pay a title company to close you. Okay, so people, smart owners, will sit down and they have a plan on how long they want to stay in a specific property, and will they be able to take advantage by paying a lower monthly payment versus what they have to pay in upfront costs. Okay. That being said, there is costs, which means that the banks make money. Okay. Every refi they make money. Now with refis going to a 15-year low, what's going to happen to the financial profits? Are they going to be able to make it? There's probably going to be a lot of banks going out of business because the refinances are gone. There's certainly going to be a lot of mortgage shops. You
would assume, and hopefully it will cause them to take the purchase deals a little bit more seriously. Where a deal isn't stuck in underwriting for a month and a half, trying to get the deal closed. So hopefully they'll take some of their money and their efforts out of the refi market and into the purchase market, which the good news, it should ultimately be hopefully a little bit easier to buy a home and sell a home, and then hopefully some of these poor people that have these deals in escrow are going to be able to sleep at night because the deals aren't the loan commitment isn't stuck in underwriting for a month.
Right. Now, we've seen some crazy things with the transactions that we're working, and I had believe it or not, and I won't mention the name of the bank, but I had a major bank tell me that they could not underwrite a loan because and this is, I'm not making this up, they said that their underwriting department was overwhelmed, and they couldn't close it. And this poor guy, he was trying to buy a house, and he was out there, he already had money in, earnest money, he paid for an appraisal, and the banks, and we kept, I mean, the seller was jumping up and down because we couldn't close, and the only thing that we could tell the seller is, this bank is telling us that they cannot get to the underwriting. It's unbelievable as that is, but it did happen. So, you know, no increase in mortgages for home purchases during the 2-year recovery. Will this go up in 2014? Will we see a loosening of lending guidelines? Something to think about, and we'll, you know, certainly keep an eye on it and keep everybody posted. So this goes right into the next slide. You know, we're going to see a market incentive to lend more. There's a huge cash reserve on the sideline. We've all heard about this. I mean, I don't know how many trillions of dollars are being basically unused in the country right now. The refi boom's going away. Purchase is going to be the only game out there. Loans are performing really well, probably because of the very strict underwriting standards.
Which that had to happen.
It did.
You can't blame that on the banks. You know, they got crushed with the mortgage meltdown, so the guidelines were way too loose. They were throwing money at people. So those guidelines certainly needed to tighten.
And we're seeing far fewer seriously delinquent mortgages, home prices increasing. We're seeing lower defaults. We're just less foreclosures right now. You know,
less foreclosures right now. The filings are way down. But one interesting thing that's been in the news, and maybe some of you out there might have seen this, where some markets are being overloaded with these zombie foreclosures. For all you Walking Dead fans out there, what's a zombie foreclosure? Basically, it's a house that's been sitting vacant for even a number of years. You have a homeowner that can't take care of it, unable to take care of it, unable to keep utilities on, unable to keep people from breaking into the house. You have a lender that owns the notes on it that's unable to take care of the property. They can't keep the utilities on. They can't keep people out of the house. So what does it do? Ultimately, the place is just kind of crumbling. There was an interesting article that I read a couple of weeks ago. I found this on CNN Money, and this came from Realty Track. This is a quote from one of their spokespersons. It says, the biggest threat from foreclosures going forward is properties that have been lingering in the foreclosure process for years. Many of them vacant, with neither the distressed homeowners nor the foreclosing lenders taking responsibility for maintenance and upkeep of the home. So, crazy situation.
It sure
is. You know,
is.
to think that you have an asset sitting there that nobody wants. Really the deal is, it's not really that nobody wants it, but it's that nobody has the financial means to take care of it.
Right.
Or these foreclosure filing companies and servicing companies just don't have the manpower or the dollars to service all the homes that they have either just foreclosed on or that they still need to foreclose on. And we've seen some real weird stuff here in St. Louis.
We sure have. We sure have. And what happens? You think about what happens to these homes whenever no one's living in a home for years, or shut up for years. You mold. You got pests taking over.
People living in it, squatters.
Yep.
I mean,
vandalism, people stealing copper. I mean, it's really, you know, it's an epidemic, I'm sure, in certain markets. You know, we have certain neighborhoods in St. Louis where this is a real problem.
Definitely.
There's no doubt about that. And obviously, it's something that, you know, that they're dealing with, you know, across the country as well.
And what about the guy that lives next door that has to live next to this, you know, piece of crap when it all comes down to it, that nobody's taking care of? I mean, how are they supposed to deal with it?
Yep. And the neighborhood. I mean, when you have really essentially dead homes in a neighborhood, that certainly is going to affect the value. So
zombies like to eat live people.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so we're going to get into some market trends. So this is, you know, some market trends, and we're going to be talking about some forecasting also. New home inventory, newly constructed home inventory is still at a 50-year low.
It's got to be picking up some. We're seeing that in our market, you know, where the builders are starting to get things going again, but it's still so low compared to the way that it's been. There's just not as much money in building homes as there was historically, which it always was pretty tight. You know, it always was kind of a pennies on the dollars type business, but it's tough for them to really squeak out any money now. And, you know, still at this point, even with 2 years of a recovery now, we're still seeing very, very low inventory of newly constructed homes.
And let's take a close look at this graph here. I mean, if you look at this, they started tracking this, you know, new construction permits, they started keeping track of this in the country in 1964, okay? And if you look, through the years, ups and downs for sure, but look where we are now. I mean, it's just really unbelievable to think we have a higher population, and more households now that new construction got that bad. Really crazy. But like you said, we're seeing quite a bit of it now in St. Charles, seeing signs to go back up in new neighborhoods and development, and that's good. It's good for the economy for sure, because you got a lot of people working. I mean, people that worked in the construction industry, they were really hard hit during the recession, and a lot of that had to do with what happened with the builders.
Yeah, even like some of the union workers or whatever that worked on the residential stuff and got laid off and weren't making any money.
Mm-hmm.
Existing home inventory near a 13-year low, and this is something that we touched on earlier, that we're just not seeing a whole lot of inventory right now. And then, with new construction still being so low, and all these zombie foreclosures out there that aren't going anywhere, it's kind of weird, or interesting to think what's going to change that. Is the inventory going to remain low? And ultimately, it very well could for a couple of years.
In the height of the market, which is going to be the 05, 06, you see the sharp rise right there of inventory. We were talking about an 18-month inventory of homes. Okay, so 18 months is way too high. I mean, we saw that.
Absolutely.
Okay, at this point, the data that we're receiving says that and this is in St. Louis market. The data that we're receiving says that basically we have enough inventory to last 4 months if all the buyers out there would buy up every single thing listed. 4 months is too low. Mm-hmm. So a healthy market, as far as inventory, should be anywhere from about 6 to 9 months, and we're not there yet. So again, what we were talking about earlier, think about this stuff whenever you're deciding what you want to do. Do you want to sell your house? Do you want to try to sell your house? Could be a really good market to do that.
Absolutely.
Shadow inventory, and this is kind of an interesting graph because it compares New York to Missouri, and this shadow inventory is similar to what you're talking about with the zombie foreclosures. The shadow inventory is a property that's on the market, mortgages late, at least a 90-day delinquency. So these people aren't paying their mortgage.
And they have yet to foreclose.
They've yet to foreclose. Missouri, from what I understand, and we're not attorneys or anything. We don't file trustees' deeds for a living or do anything like that. But Missouri is a much easier state to foreclose on a homeowner than some of the other states. New York, for example. New York's much tougher. Missouri is actually a non-judicial state. What that means is you can foreclose. A bank can foreclose on a homeowner without getting in front of the judge. It's just a matter of filing paperwork. Whereas in New York, they have to go in front of a judge to foreclose. So there's going to be a bigger backlog. Obviously, anytime anybody knows they've ever had any experience in the court system, it's real easy to get put off, and everything takes time. There's no doubt about that.
New York was one of the markets mentioned in the zombie foreclosure article, along with Chicago, a couple markets down in Florida as well.
So you have the homeowners that basically saying, we don't want the property anymore, we're gone. They're not making their mortgages, and the banks can't get caught up enough to even foreclose on these people. And again, even a lot of the houses that have been foreclosed on and the people are out are still sitting vacant. So that's going to create an interesting dynamic as far as what's going to happen with these. I mean, the St. Louis counties are tearing them down.
Right.
They're just having the counties, the government's coming in and tearing these houses down to level on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, maybe that's something that we'll start to see more of in the future.
But you got to think that this is going to be one of the biggest problems that's going to weigh on the real estate market as a whole for the next couple of years, because it really is a problem where you have a bunch of houses that are just sitting there collecting dust. It does erode neighborhoods, it erodes values, and it's a real problem.
So housing starts need to reach 1.5 million soon, or persistent housing shortage. And we'll go through some data. There's actually some local data on St. Louis area, but again, you can see, they're saying that we need to, 1.5 million as far as housing starts to be able to accommodate new households and buyers coming to the market. We're not even close still at this point.
Right. With the inventory, again, we mentioned this earlier. What's going to change it? Are the builders just going to go bonkers, and there's going to be so many new homes being put up that's going to change the market?
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's something that could, but will that happen or will it not happen? It's very tough to know at this point.
It's almost, when you look at what happened, when you think about the crash. I mean, to me, the crash was so catastrophic that it's going to really take. I mean, how long is it going to be until we get back into a normal market? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, decades.
And it could be a new normal.
It could be. So again, this is the St. Louis area housing permits all the way back to 2000. You see the spike in 2005, 2006, and then where we went after that is down, down, down. And then interesting to me, even though there's low inventory, but if you look in 2011, 2012, 2013, we're not seeing that much of a spike.
They're not really climbing yet.
No.
You have housing that's up, 20% over the last couple of years, and the amount of housing permits being pulled in St. Louis, it's not really climbing yet.
Well, let's face it. There's a lot of builders that didn't make it, right? How many builders didn't make it through this? The big ones that were sitting on a lot of capital were able to just keep building a little bit.
Some of the boutique type specialty builders made it for sure.
But the mom and pop shops or the smaller builders, the medium-sized builders, and in St. Charles, St. Louis, even some of the big, huge builders
that have been around for years.
And years. They're gone now.
Right.
So there's just not enough builders out there, which we really think that this will change. It's just just a matter of taking a look at the market, and it's a matter of when.
GDP, no fresh recession in sight.
Good news.
Very good news. Obviously you see what happened looking at this graph, the huge dip in GDP over the recession. It was a bad one. I don't think anybody can argue with that. This is good news, even for the housing market, for every market. The fact that the economy is going to function at a higher level and be a little bit more healthy, and people are going to be making money. The markets are going to have a better return, and all in all, that can only help. Consumer spending growth up in 2013, and again, more good news where we're seeing 2% growth, not 3% or 4%, which is what everybody wants. But
right.
At this point, especially in light of what happened over the last several years, we'll certainly take the 2%.
Absolutely. you look at this goes back to 1980, and there was, obviously a couple of recessions, 1980, 1990, 91, but nothing as bad as what happened in 2008. Yeah, this was the worst one that we've seen, hopefully in our lifetimes, hopefully in our kids' lifetimes. We don't want this to happen again.
Household net worth, same deal. We're seeing that starting to climb again. People are worth more money now. There's just a little bit more money in the economy as a whole. Business spending growth, along with the same line, is that we're seeing an improvement there. Not a crazy improvement, not the 5% or the 10% that everybody wants, but again, we'll take the 2%.
And what they're saying here is to sustain the economy, it needs to be around 5 to 10%. Okay, even though 2% is good and anything positive is good at this point, but we need to, business spending is going to have to get a little bit better for the economy to keep on growing. U.S. total payroll, 8 million jobs lost, almost 8 million jobs gained. So that's fantastic. You can see the huge dip in jobs and payroll, and it's good. We're going back in the right direction, obviously. One thing that you have to think about when you look at this graph is, is this the stimulus at work still? How many trillions of dollars did they pump into the economy? All from the government. That did create a lot of payroll jobs. There's been a lot of government jobs created through that stimulus, and again, that's not going to last forever. So eventually the market's going to have to, become healthy on its own and not have the interference from the government.
But you would assume that it's going to taper off a little bit first before that happens, and maybe even drop a little bit.
There's an improvement in unemployment rate. Or is there an improvement in unemployment rate? This is interesting because what these two graphs are doing here is they're actually taking a look at the overall, this first one's the overall improvement in the unemployment rate. This is the number that we see on the news and that they publish everywhere. Okay, and it's going down fantastic. It's gone down quite a bit in Missouri and St. Louis area. But the second slide takes into account labor force participation. So what's really happening in reality when you take a close look at the employment rate is, yes, there's less people collecting unemployment. There's less people that are quote-unquote unemployed. But the labor force participation rate has continued to shrink over the past couple of years. Disability. We see a lot more people on welfare, this sort of thing. There's actually less workers in the market than there were, and a lot of people are giving up. Okay, so overall, it's really, everybody wants to see the number go down as far as the unemployment rate, but there could be, something lurking a little bit in the back with this labor force participation rate. And interesting enough, you don't ever hear about that on the news.
Right.
So St. Louis area toll jobs.
Same thing, that we started to see a climb here. We really like the job outlook in St. Louis in our market for a couple different reasons. And this is something that we've been talking about for years now, kind of ever since the crash happened. But we have a lot of healthcare jobs. We have a lot of logistics jobs. Logistics is interesting because they really need boots on the ground, so to speak, in order to drive the trucks, drive the boats, move the freight, all that type of stuff. The fact that we're located on two major rivers certainly gives us a leg up as far as logistics is concerned. We have some major hospitals here in St. Louis. Barnes, Cardinal Glennon, have a lot of specialize with sick kids, and there's actually people that bring patients to Barnes and Cardinal Glennon from all around the world to get treatment. So we have a lot of universities here in St. Louis, so there's lots of options for education. We found recently that kind of before the crash, if someone got a degree, they'd be not more likely, but there was a lot bigger likelihood that they would move to New York, Chicago, California, whatever. Now that we're finding that a lot of the college grads are staying in St. Louis really because of the affordability. You can buy a house here, you can have a family, you can do what you want, and it's not so expensive here living in the Midwest. And then the fact that we do have high-paying jobs. We have a bunch of Fortune 500 companies that have been in St. Louis for a long time: Anheuser-Busch, Emerson Electric, Boeing, Express Scripts. The list goes on and on. So as far as we're concerned, and this is something, even being in real estate, that we're very excited about our market, is the jobs outlook.
And you obviously see that in this graph because toll jobs going up in St. Louis. I mean, that's really, really good news for the area. It's good news for the Midwest. All right, now we're going to get to some forecasting. Fun part, what's going to happen in the future?
The old crystal ball.
The crystal ball. So inflation will be notably higher in 2015. We talked about that a little bit. Right now, no threatening inflation signs for this year, but inflation rises 3 to 6% in 2015. So again, all those people out there that are purchasing real estate, buying a house, buying investment property, probably going to be thinking themselves that they did. Well above the Fed's preferred rate. This is inflation of 2%, but we're not going to see the double digits that we saw in the 70s. We were babies in the end of the 70s, so we didn't see it ourselves, but I'm sure a lot of people remember. And I know things got really tight with gas, and inflation was really, really bad at that point. So hopefully we're not going to see that again. That's what the economists at the National Association of Realtors are telling us. So we'll have faith in them.
We'll see.
Rising renters and homeowners rent growth. So again, this shows that owners are getting a little bit more for rent, okay, and then renters are paying a little bit more, which is fantastic news for owners.
For owners,
and we're probably going to see more of this, I'm sure, in the future.
Rising mortgage rates to 5.3% by the end of 2014. So National Association of Realtors, I think everybody else, like we've been talking about, are saying that
that's the prediction.
The interest rates got to go up. I mean, they have to go up. They're not going to skyrocket, but they're predicting that they're going to be above 5% by the end of the year, which is probably reasonable, I would assume. And you go back to the existing home sales, it's not going to go up at all in 2014. So 2014 is probably going to be pretty similar to last year. You don't expect a big, huge improvement on the existing home sales, but we should see an improvement in 2015 of 4%. Median price is going to improve in 2014, and then it's also going to improve in 2015, but not as much, according to this forecast. Dollar volume estimate. Basically, this breaks down to how many dollars are being put in real estate, and it's going to improve. So there is going to be more money being put into real estate, more stability in the market. I think people there for a while were scared to buy real estate. Let's face it.
Right.
And I think rightly so. You go back to some of the people that bought real estate during those really crazy years. Maybe they did the right thing. They probably did, But, a lot of people didn't want to hedge their bets and put a bunch of money into real estate for a couple of years because the market was so bad. And now with the recovering market, with the consumer sentiment improving, we're going to see people more willing to stick their dollars in real estate.
Well, everybody thought that the market bottomed out in 2008, including us. I mean, everybody thought that that's what everybody was saying, and in reality, it probably didn't bottom out completely to about summer 2011. So people that went out and bought homes in 2008, 2009, 2010, everybody ended up taking a bath, and obviously the people that bought before that really got hurt.
Sure.
So I think it's interesting that they're forecasting like a 0% growth in existing home sales, but we are coming off a really good time in real estate in the country. I mean, 18 months in a row, that's pretty impressive.
Forecast number 3, more unequal wealth distribution. This reminds me of my dad. I remember when I was a kid, he always told me, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I'm sure a lot of dads said that to their kids around, but you know what, they're right. And we're seeing that not just in the real estate market, but this slide really stood out to me, where it says that the renters are not going to accumulate wealth. There's more renters, so there's going to be more people out there that are taking their paycheck and they're giving it right to their landlord. Great thing for owners. That makes us happy. It makes me smile all day long. I'm so happy that I own investment property now, and that the homeowners build wealth after buying at low prices. We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Stagnant homeowner population. This is really interesting to me in that it has to do with the different generations, which we've talked about this some. Terry and I are Xers. I don't know what that means. It's a terrible name.
Yeah,
we're Generation
X.
Xers.
Yeah.
The next generation are millennials, and these are these crazy kids that are younger than us, but they're a little bit less likely to put their money in real estate or buy the big house or move to the suburbs than our generation was. Why? Who knows? But things are always changing. But it is going to lead to more of this unequal wealth distribution, where a lot of these younger kids may not be as motivated to be owners as our.
Well, they're not going to have as much whenever they get to be senior citizens either. It's as
That's
simple
true.
as that.
Very true. And then the tight credit. Obviously, how many buyers are out there that want to buy but just can't? And then the fact that investors are going to continue to become an increasing share of the property owners. There's people buying property in St. Louis from all over the country.
Oh yeah,
from all over
I'm
the
sure
world.
probably in most markets.
Probably most markets. St. Louis is, for whatever reason, is bringing a lot of capital in, from different markets in, Australia, China, Europe. I mean, they're coming and they're buying real estate here, and probably for good reason. Renter households in thousands. Again, back to the point, are we becoming a renter nation? Probably so.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the number of renters out there is going to continue to rise for all these factors. People don't have enough money to make the down payment. Mortgages are harder to get. How many people went through short sales and foreclosures in the last 5 or 6 years? All those factors are going to lead to more and more renters. So, if you're out there and you're thinking about buying an investment property, maybe this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you're going to get out there and buy. You're going to say, now's a good time to do it. Renters are plentiful. You can still buy the homes cheaper.
In St. Louis, it's 51%. 51% of the population are renters in St. Louis, and that's actually a good number. That's a high number for landlords. Rents are high in St. Louis. Property's cheap in St. Louis. So if you can run your business effectively and you want to be an owner, St. Louis is a perfect market to do it.
And you know what? It's a tough business.
It is.
I mean, nobody's saying it's not.
We've been doing it for 10 years plus, and it's
difficult. I mean,
yeah.
I've laid in bed at night, thinking about my rental property.
Sure.
And I think most landlords have. It really starts with a good plan. You got to have a good team around you. You got to have people that are giving you good advice, and you really don't want to get in a position where you don't have enough leverage to run your property. That's one of the most important things about being an effective landlord.
This next slide is homeowner households. It has not grown since 2006, but they're saying that it's primed to grow, which is good. And we see that it just through the years, 1980 all the way to 2006, it was just up, up, up. A couple of little dips, but consistently up year over year, where it started to become stagnant with the recession. There's just been no job growth. There's been, the population's still growing, but what it is basically is because of the slow creation of new households, it comes from the fact that people are still living with their parents or they're staying with a roommate. People are just unable, particularly young people, and we're not trying to pick on young people. for sure.
We like young people.
We like young people, but particularly the young people, the people graduate college, they got student loans, there's no jobs out there. What are they going to do? They're going to stay live with mom and dad and work at a bar or a restaurant or whatever it is, work at the grocery store.
I mean, it's interesting to me that they say prime to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to grow? Different question.
The economy is going to have to probably improve a little bit. We're going to have to see a little bit more of that business spending. The GDP is probably going to have to go up a little bit in order for us to make any type of significant gains here.
The wealth distribution, on the same point, where you have more and more people that are holding on to the cash. I mean, less people that are holding on to more of the cash, and more people that are losing more cash. So what caused this? And this is kind of interesting. Is it Washington? Is it the Dodd-Frank law?
Maybe. Who knows?
Sure. Lawsuits. It's tough to say. What's really causing this? And you see that the crash affected owners in the wrong way. So people that owned real estate during the crash, they got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And hurt bad.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt about that. There's no denying it. Shoot, we got hurt on our real estate. And, a lot of people got hurt worse than us. A lot of people lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening now is you're seeing a reversal where that's going to start to change and probably continue to change.
To me, when you look at this slide, it's just really staggering to compare, wealth from a renter to an owner. I mean, and obviously most renters are younger people or whatever the case is, but
not always.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I look at this slide and what does it tell me? It says,
I want to be an owner.
Yeah, if you want to be on the right side and you want to be wealthy, you want to create wealth, what better way to do it than through real estate? Okay, so that is going to be the end of our slideshow tonight and our presentation. And again, we want to really thank everybody out there that took the time to listen to us. We really enjoy doing these presentations. Not that we love listening to ourselves talk, but we think it's very important to really stay on top of predictions, what's going to happen. I love looking at the forecasting. I think it's very interesting.
I think it ultimately makes us better at our jobs and makes us able to give better advice to our clients. But, smart people out there are going to look at this information too, because if you're in the market or you want to get into the market, taking a look at this data is ultimately going to help you make better decisions.
Absolutely, absolutely. So everybody out there, thanks again. Look us up on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. We have a page, a Yuede team page. You can also download our presentations at the iTunes store. Everybody have a fantastic night.
Thanks, everybody.